Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the Small Talk podcast. My name is TJ, and I'm coming to you from the magical world of the editing booth. Cannon and I got really excited and started recording episodes well before we started getting really the appropriate equipment to do so. Specifically, my microphone absolutely sucked. So I wanted to let you know that by episode 4, I start using the microphone I'm using right here instead of the crummy gaming headset microphone that I was using. We're aware of that issue, and we moved to fix it, but we couldn't really afford to lose 3 episodes. Also, by episode 4, we start turning on the webcams, though we had some issues. And on episode 5, which I have not gotten to yet, the webcam should be working properly, I hope. Canon had some technical difficulties. Anyway, you slice it, I just wanted to say thank you for hanging out with us and checking out these first couple of episodes while there are some technical difficulties. They get a lot better, we get more confident, and we learn a little bit about podcasting as we go from going back and listening to episodes and editing them and seeing what did or didn't work. And maybe you can hear my cat yelling at some birds. Anyways, thanks again, and I'll see you in the episode. Cheers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Small Talk podcast. I'm Cannon.
I'm TJ.
There was a bit of a gap there, but that's fine. You know, I mean, it's not really. We're doing this right, and it's our first episode and everything. Do you like the slow intro, or are you more do you want to be the quickest gun in the West when it comes to just the I'm TJ, right there?
I don't think it really matters too much. Yeah. I mean, some days if I'm feeling, really sharp, maybe it'll, and I'm TJ.
Right.
That's a little too morning zoo, but no, I don't know. You know me.
Welcome to 102.1, The Quake. This weekend, we're doing our Get the Let Out marathon for the next 72 hours. Yeah, that's not really the...
You're actually better at that voice than I thought. I didn't know you could do that one.
Oh, God, dude, I could tell you. That is a real, listener, that is a real, radio station from where I grew up, and it was where I developed my hatred of the song LaGrange by ZZ Top. But I digress. That is a story for another time. TJ, they want to know what the hell this thing is, and I'm here to tell them this is a podcast where we talk about miniatures.
That's right, Cannon. That's exactly it. Right now, we are just doing a little audio only, which is a strange way to handle miniature painting, a pretty visual art form. And eventually, we will probably get some sort of visual elements involved. But for right now, I think we've both come into this with a really simple idea, which is there are a lot of really amazing painters out there between Masterclass and YouTube and this, that. And I know you even have a whole channel yourself dedicated to painting.
I do.
But what's, I think, interesting about having a little podcast like this is just having a space where we can talk and kind of dive deep into not only the technical, oh, this is what I did, this is why I chose these colors, but to instead explore really just what the experience of painting a model is, what it is to connect with an individual miniature, or getting excited about the history of a piece, or any of those different things. So that's, I think, where we're going to have a lot of fun, is not just talking about the actual painting, which for sure we will, but getting a chance to explore kind of more of the less talked about but still exciting parts of this hobby.
Yeah, because there's been a lot made of, how do I put the thing together? How do I paint it? But, I'm there's a lot of people that are better at that than I am, than both of us are. So we want to kind of get into how these, the process of these. How were these to paint? Were they fun? Were they not? This first one, well, we're not starting on a total downer. This thing has stuff I like. Did the teens the teens would call this mid, right? That's the
I
jargon.
actually don't know. That's really embarrassing.
Well, what? I thought you were the walking lexicon of the hip mid 2020s teen lingo.
Yeah, at some point we all get older, and you don't notice it happen, but eventually you go, I don't know what anything is anymore. Oh,
Yeah,
frick.
yeah.
Yeah, no, but so I think that this first model we're going to be talking about, and not to bear the lead, but the WizKids Young Adult Gold Dragon.
Yes. WizKids.
It's kind of the perfect one to talk about because did I love every element of painting this thing? Absolutely not. Did I love every element of the sculpt? Absolutely not. Did it make me frustrated? Absolutely so. But also, man, I had so much fun the whole time just thinking about playing D&D, the times we've gone against dragons, the time my friends have ruined dragon encounters or dragon encounters have ruined my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a really fun experience in that way.
Yes. It's a very, I would say this is the eating our vegetables of kind of miniature painting. Like at some point you're going to paint a dragon miniature for your D&D group. Both of us play D&D.
Yeah, the guys who paint miniatures and play D&D is a very tight Venn diagram. There's a lot of overlap there. About 100%.
Yes. Yeah. No, but yes, I would say especially these pre-assembled, pre-primed WizKids minis are the eating of your vegetables.
Yeah.
So I want to start talking about the tail seam. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The tail seam? Is that what you said?
Yes. On the back of his tail, because gold dragons have interconnected to their tail wings, and kind of towards where the tail starts, there was a very big gap between the digits of the wing and the folds of the wing. So there was kind of just like a hard break on his wing.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I wasn't even sure if that was the model or if that was
just like a crappy, like the one you got.
Like, I honestly, because we've tried really hard not to discuss our paint jobs or these models up until the point of recording because we want to be able to air this out live and have this conversation. Canon, I spent the entire time wondering if I got a 1 in a million bad quality, everything missed the mold model. And right now, I do not believe that to be the case.
No, I would agree.
from that alone. I understand mold lines are something that every miniature painter deals with.
Right.
Injection mold lines are the bane of my existence. I will spend hours and hours and hours and hours sanding mold lines that nobody will ever even see because it just drives me crazy. Oh, there you go. You just sent me yours. Ooh, I like what you did.
Yeah.
And I think we should, especially if we load this on YouTube and everybody, this is our first time. We're kind of figuring it out.
Yeah.
We should definitely try to include these photos where possible. And I will, I'll send you mine here as well.
The way I kind of went about this with the dragon was I was like, this to me is a very basic dish. It's got like 1 or 2 flavors. The dragon model is very simple, and I wanted to just paint it like a gold dragon. So I essentially looked at this thing and was like, I just seen the D&D movie the weekend before.
God, that was surprisingly good.
It was a lot of fun. And did you catch the Paul Scheer? I think it's a Paul Scheer cameo in the movie. Did you catch that?
Paul Scheer, I'm not.
Paul Scheer from like
I'm so bad with names.
Unspooled, which is his like him and I forget his co-host's name. They go through like the top 100 movies ever made, and then his other movie podcast was How Did This Get Made?
Oh no, okay, yeah. I just threw out a quick search. Yeah, he was in The League.
Yep.
That was
Yep. He was in
really
that.
good show,
He was in
actually.
that.
Was he in there? I didn't know that.
Well, he's not like in it, but that that painting. Oh, spoilers for Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves.
Yeah, how about we say the painting scene?
Yeah, the painting scene where they're trying to get the painting. That painting, it looks an awful like one
Looks a
Mr.
lot like
Paul
him.
Scheer with a comedy goatee, in my opinion.
That's really funny. I didn't catch that.
No, did you think I was talking about the Bradley Cooper, Mr. American Sniper himself?
No, I didn't catch that either. I didn't catch any cameos. What's going on?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
No, so I'll say what's so funny is, so you know me, I'm a pretty big cynic.
Uh-huh.
When you and I talk movies, it's almost always me saying like, "Yeah, that thing sucked."
Uh-huh.
You know, that's been our usual go-to. And so I went into the D&D movie with
Yeah, you saw it before me.
I did,
and
and
you were low on it.
Canon, I was going in not just to hate watch it. Me and my buddy put together bingo cards
Mm-hmm.
of everything we expected to find in the movie. And I'll say, I got a bingo,
Yeah.
but I loved it. I was so shocked, and I thought I was going to
Mm-hmm.
loathe that film. It was the same charm as the first Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's like, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy was Star Wars better than Star Wars, and the D&D movie was like, oh, this is a Marvel movie better than Marvel. This was great. Yeah, I loved it. But yeah, no, so I didn't catch any cameos.
I had a lot of fun with it. I saw it with my lady friend, and she's a giant Bridgerton head. And the guy who plays the paladin, I'm forgetting his name, but he's also in Bridgerton, and he plays a very, very hot man in both things.
He plays hot guy well.
Yes, he plays hot guy extremely well.
Yeah.
And he was a lot of fun. So she really liked that. And then of course I was like, is that like when they go to Michelle Rodriguez's like ex's house, and like the door opens and it's fucking like little baby Bradley Cooper?
Was it? That's so funny. I thought he looked a lot like him, but I didn't think it was actually him.
No, that's straight up Bradley Cooper. Yeah.
Was that
yeah,
really?
Man. Yeah, it's a weird cameo, but yeah, and it doesn't like serve any purpose in the plot really. It's just funny that it's small Bradley Cooper.
No, it comes. It's important. They get an important item.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, it's all coming together. It's almost like it's a hey, you know how Logan is secretly a Western?
You're gonna kill me. I've never seen Logan.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to see it so badly.
Well,
and that was just a period in my life where I was working like 60, 70 hours a week, and I just never got a chance.
Well, if I would recommend it.
I agree. Oh, they did the second one that was like based on Old Man Logan, right?
Well, no, that's
the same one?
That's Logan.
That's the same one. Okay. Yeah, I'm getting all mixed up. Yeah. I mean, Old Man Logan was a great comic. I don't remember it terribly well since it's been however long since it came out and I actually read it. But yeah, so this dang old dragon, dude.
Yeah. So to circle back to my point, I was thinking about painting it like the statue.
Oh, yeah.
But then I was looking at a new set of dry brushes I got. I was like, well, this thing's pre-primed. I think I'm just going to dry brush it gold and then do a series of dry brushes and washes, paint up and highlight the spines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is a very gold dragon, as you can see from my pictures.
Yeah, I sent you some pictures as well here for you to look at. And I suppose, not to bury the lead for anybody, Cannon and I, interestingly, we became friends really right as COVID started. We both went to the same college, but never met when we were in the same town. And then by the time COVID happened, Cannon moved across the state to be back with his family. So we became friends through online school, going to the same physical university, having never met.
Yes.
And so even today, unfortunately, we live a couple hours apart from each other, don't get to see each other terribly often, but continue to chat just all the time about this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, when I moved to Texas for a very short window with my old partner, and Cannon even flew out, and I think that was the first time we met in person, was you flying across the country to come crash at my apartment.
Yeah, I think it was. Well, yeah, that, oh god, and the cat allergies, and oh boy. was a whole deal. And of course, it's Texas, so I'm like, oh, everything will be open, and well, let's go see the LBJ library. Oh, that's the one fucking building that's closed.
Yeah, the thing you were most excited for was the one thing that was closed.
Ugh.
It was unfortunate because it really is a cool spot, and we just didn't get to do all of the cool stuff that we wanted to.
Yeah, man.
Well, yeah, that's right. And then I ended up moving back to Washington. I think literally the day that you left.
Yeah, I think so.
I think I dropped you off at the airport, and then I got in my car and started driving back to
Yep.
Washington.
I should have smuggled you back in a suitcase.
That would have been so much cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, you might have died.
That would have been even cheaper.
Yes. Yeah, you would have. Your body would have just gotten lost in the luggage, and
Yeah.
no burial, no nothing. Easy
Yeah.
peasy.
So my approach with my dragon was a bit different. I actually started with, what is it, Rust-Oleum or something like that? One of the major spray paint companies
So
out there.
you spray primed it.
I did a spray prime, and I started with that Rust-Oleum. And the reason being, I'd actually picked it up in the past to do, for a friend, I did a little project where I printed out this Legend of Zelda, like very specifically Ocarina of Time lithographic boss, right? And I just did a single coat of this, and it's like extremely brilliant gold leaf spray. Unbelievably glossy, shiny. It looks incredible. So I actually started off with that for my first coat. And then my mission from there was, how do I grunge this up? But I started with the most brilliant gold that I could possibly find. And then from there, I really wanted to play with grunging it up. And I was really thinking back outside of the like classic gold dragon artwork from Dungeons and Dragons, where I tend to really think a lot about kind of 3.5. That's where I cut my teeth. All of the different metallic dragons, or at least I'd say the bronze, copper, and gold, all of them very regularly had these kind of bluish colors to them. And I was really thinking about that. You know, the Statue of Liberty famously has that, it's that patinaed color, but that's not actually the color. It's actually a big, what is it, bronze or copy? I don't actually remember which. So I was really playing more with that idea. So I started gold, and then I seriously patinaed my wings, which was something I had never tried before. Yeah, I kept grunging things up with the first oil wash I've ever done, and then
what oils were you using?
So I used a Winsor Newt, and it was this. I'd have to run across the apartment to find the actual tube, but it was this reddish brown that turned out to be a lot more like a brownish red when I actually started plopping it on the model. So I freaked out a little bit, but kept my calm, and I think rallied it pretty well. But there was a moment where I went, oh crap, I just ruined my whole miniature. Basically, my technique seems exaggerated, but whatever. So I did my gold prime. I went through and I did my wing color really intensely. I hit my base, my claws. I did everything, right? I completely painted the model where you could have called it head to tail done. Then I went through, oil washed 100% of the model with that color, and then peeled it off, and then finished up by going back and hitting highlights the next day and cleaning some stuff up. So that's where you'll see.
Right.
I've never been brave enough to do edge highlights before. I've really kind of gotten away with being a dry brush guy most of my life, so I've wanted to use this podcast to kind of push myself. So I did some silver edge highlighting around his face and whiskers and all that to draw a little bit of extra attention there. And then went back and kind of cleaned up the spine and the wing. Tried to play around with the base to give a little bit of OSL, which I had never tried before. The OSL, object source lighting, if anybody's not familiar.
Yeah, that looks good.
I had some issues with, but for my first time ever, I felt pretty good. Realistically, another just kind of issue of the build quality of this model came up, which is it is stuck to that base and I could not move it.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to get it off of there to try to do my OSL because I really wanted it to feel like he was, you know, a gold dragon living in a mountain.
Yeah, you cannot get it off.
And so I really wanted to have that kind of magma glow feel going on. And I think I did an okay job.
Yeah.
But I should have focused more on oranges instead of reds. That was a really interesting learning moment for me with this. You know, it's just red's a bit too harsh most of the time. for at least for what I was trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, building, it's easier to like imply red than it is to just like glop red. Like glopping red, like, because red's, a primary, like it overpowers things very easily if you don't use it carefully. And so yeah, kind of using like pinks, purples, browns, to mix colors, or even like darkening or brightening reds to make them less harsh, I find is kind of generally where you want to go, because I definitely have some like old miniatures where I would just glop red
Yeah.
on their eyes to be like glowing red eyes, and it just looks like they have a big old red pool ball sitting in their skull. So what I did with mine was I had not pretty much just dry brushed everything in a long time. And I said this was like eating your vegetables, and I didn't want to have to do edge highlighting for this. So I started with a base of Retributor armor from Citadel, and I just dry brushed the ever living heck out of this thing, got it nice and golded up before then going back in with another dry brush, and I believe Greedy Gold from the Army Painter, which is a more pale gold, and kind of hitting those highlights with a dry brush before moving on to Shining Silver and this really bright silver color, and kind of giving it a lighter highlight on points of focus, like especially his neck spines and the face and the tips of his wings and that kind of stuff. So for my bit of OSL, I wanted a contrast of his kind of burnished scales with a colder blue eye.
I really like that, by the way.
Like you said, OSL, it's very tricky. And if you're gonna have to like play a lot with it, I find, to get a good result. So you want to use paints that you'll be able to manipulate after you put them on the model, and stuff that you can like stuff you'll be able to work with and won't just require you to rebase coat, rehighlight, to cover up mistakes. So I dry brushed over the kind of area around his eyes where I'd put some silver highlights. I put some now white highlights, and I coated his eyes white before using some blue, some like very bright magic-y blue that I'd watered down from the Army Painter speed paint range, and kind of moved that around his eyes until I got a nice glowing effect that I think really makes that part of the model pop. Because dragons are typically, they're not dumb brutes, they're these like big ancient wizened creatures that are meant to be mentors to our D&D parties, or sometimes villains, and every role in between. Like a dragon is a very
Force of nature.
Yeah, it's a very big part of the story you're telling, usually, if you have them. And I really wanted to give him some character in the face, because the face is that's where you draw your attention on a model first, usually. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. The one part of this I would probably do different if I could do another go. I tried to pick out his spines with the digits of his wings
Yeah.
with black.
Yep.
This was a fool's errand
Yep.
on this model,
I
because
have the same criticism.
while they are there, it's not super clear where they begin and end. On the left wing, if you were the dragon, you had wings, your left wing, there's a pretty gnarly mold line where you can see that, and without green stuff or some filling putty, it would be almost impossible to get rid of. And kind of trying to hit these spines was very difficult without overspilling, keeping on track where they are. So if I could do it again, I probably wouldn't do that. I think it looks okay at a tabletop distance, but I think just the way this model is put together in parts, but not by us, the people who buy it and paint it, makes this very difficult to paint certain parts of this miniature because, as you said earlier, he's stuck to the base and you can't get him off.
Yeah, I'll say so. With my experience, I played with those spines for I don't know how long. And I kind of had the same experience you did, where I was trying to pick out those spines because, I wanted them to be a striking visual element. At different points in times, they went from green to brown to gold, this, that, whatever. Ultimately, what I found is with the way that I did these kind of patinaed wings, and some of these pictures show it off better than others, it really has this kind of opalescent feeling to it,
Right.
which I'd done by kind of moving between these blues and greens, then, doing my inks, or my, not inks, my oil wash. But I dry brushed on Vallejo Old Gold across everything, but very thin. So it gave it a really nice uniform sheen. And the oil wash fell very naturally around the spines. One of the issues with the spines is they don't really tell a good story, which is to say, as they go further down the body, you want them to get thinner. And it seemed like they were pretty random as to how thick they were at any given time.
Yeah.
And they'd be bendy and they'd be weird. But so what I ultimately found was I went through, and once I had done everything else, I did a little bit of brown. And similar to you, I was trying to kind of pick it out like you did with your black line work. The brown was luckily a little bit more subtle. And then I went over that and really hit that with that old gold. And it blended very nicely with everything else. So by the time that it actually comes out, I think,
Yeah.
especially, it's kind of hard to see in these pictures because I don't have a great photo studio or anything. This is one of those miniatures where I think in person it plays a lot, like my paint job plays quite a bit better than it does with the technology I have right now for photographing.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm actually pretty lucky where my spines are picked out and pretty dang visible.
Yeah, like I think the idea of washing them and then treating them with a dry brush and kind of that way of doing it, I think that works. I think it's a lot less frustrating than what I tried to do, especially because I think yours holds up probably more on the tabletop versus mine might be a little more striking from a distance, but I don't think it holds up as well at close inspection.
Sure. Yeah, I would say, that's an interesting thing I would say just about this sculpt in general,
Mm-hmm.
which again, there's more things to talk about with the sculpt as a whole. But yeah, this is a 3 foot away model.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
This is not a pick it up and inspect it model as much.
Yeah, I'm not going to a golden demon with a WizKids model.
No. Well, and the thing is, I think what's interesting is now I've never painted other WizKids models, but I've looked at plenty of them in my, local game stores, and they normally seem to be a better quality than this particular model was.
Yeah, I don't know what is up with this particular one.
I feel like we just got unlucky in our.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah, well, especially I'm sure you noticed this too, kind of those fins on the back of his neck. There was just excess plastic all over the place.
Yeah.
And I tried trimming some of it up, but eventually I just went, I can't do this. It was so much trimming. And this gets me to you talked about a gap earlier. I think the greatest sin of this model is probably the wing gap.
Oh.
I don't know how egregious yours was, but mine was so bad. I actually went through and it caused problems down the line with this whole model as well. But as you know, Cannon, I do a lot of 3D printing. I really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a bunch of my 3D printer resin, and if you check these photos, you can see a white, the white primed one, and you'll go, huh, that looks kind of detailed. That's because I used my resin, and I actually painted basically the entire model with 3D printer resin, tried to keep it as thin as I could, and then UV cured the crap out of it because I was trying to find a good way to fill those gaps, and I didn't want to go green stuff. I wanted to play around and see how this worked. In some ways, it was awesome. In some ways, it was terrible. But ultimately, the amount of detail that I lost kind of across the model from trying to take that approach was sort of catastrophic. They presented me with a problem, and I didn't solve the problem properly. So it's partially on me. But also, man, this miniature just had some issues.
It asks a lot for especially the type of miniature this is, right? Like this is not for necessarily like miniature wargaming stuff where you're going to be pulling this out as part of your like dragon army, or it's probably not going to show up in like your miniature skirmish games. This thing's a boss monster.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's a dragon. And my problem with it is really like it's not something I have a lot of control on out of the box. Like I'd have to cut it apart, resculpt parts of it. And that's kind of disingenuous to how this model presents itself, because you look at it, it says pre-primed, ready to paint, and it's already assembled, right? So if you're a new painter looking to get into this and have your first model look good, you're going to think like, oh, I just pop it out of the box and slap some paint on it. Well, you're going to run into like a lot of weird jank that like makes it not as pleasing once it is finished.
Yep.
And I think your assessment that it's about a 3 foot away model is pretty good.
Yeah. Well, and I think again that's something that kind of jumps at me, right? So when you're looking at a miniature like this, now why would you choose to purchase a primed but unpainted model versus a fully painted pre-made by Wizards? And usually it's because, well, maybe it's that you enjoy painting, or maybe you're going, hey, this is going to be an important character or important boss monster, and I want something that stands out compared to a pre-painted line.
Right.
And in my experience, well, yeah, sure, if we remove our particular experience with this model, let's just say generically,
yeah,
me and my party, we're playing D&D, and we're going to hit our big boss monster, we kill the gold dragon, or insert dragon, big monster. Now, you don't see these models in every game. So what this guy ends up doing is living on your shelf.
Mm-hmm.
He lives on a shelf next to all of, your anime figures and your favorite toys and comic books, because we're all a bunch of dorks. It ends up living up there for a long time. And then eventually the next time that you need something that's in that size category that you don't happen to have the right size category for, he comes back down onto the table and you go, oh yeah, this dragon's actually a big old troll today. But really, you're very rarely going to get to use him as a dragon again. Maybe eventually you do. It almost certainly won't be the same color. So for all of those reasons, it's not going to get it gets the shelf treatment, right? That's really what it comes down to. It gets the shelf treatment, not my big box of miniatures treatment.
Right.
And for that reason, the build quality is so important. And I think that's the place where I really got let down, was going, man, it's just this isn't a great shelf model.
I will say the model is like $20.
Absolutely.
So we got to be clear about that.
Yeah.
This thing is it's a lot of plastic for $20. This is a good project. If you wanted to go absolutely crazy mode and like highlight every scale individually, you could do that on this model. I don't know how good it would look, right? Like I feel like unfortunately the floor and the ceiling on this model are pretty close.
I will tell you that what you just described, going, sitting there and going hand detail on every scale, was when we said, hey, let's do a podcast. Hey, let's start with this gold dragon.
Uh-huh.
That was genuinely my intention, was I'm going to put 40 hours or something into the most badass dragon in the world, and I've never painted something this good in my life, and I'm going to really knock it out. And when I actually got the model and discovered the build quality, I went, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
And that was the thing, is I came into this model with, I don't even want to say unrealistic expectations. I just came in with much higher expectations.
Yeah.
again, I don't want to sit here and poo-poo the WizKids line. I've seen plenty of them that
I'll be real. This is like their first model I've ever painted, so I don't want to.
exactly, and I've only ever gotten to see them, through the plastic, walking around the game store. I've never taken them out, investigated,
Uh huh.
dug in really deep. So, frankly, I wasn't looking for errors in the model when we said this was the model we were going to do. I didn't discover them until I opened up the package and went, well, we're not returning this. And I don't think that this is necessarily indicative of all of their products. So I don't want to sit here and poo-poo WizKids. I'm not afraid of poo-pooing them. If we do more WizKids models in the future and I go, man, all these things stink, I'll say so. I'm perfectly happy sticking to my guns like that.
Well, I'm a money monster, so if they want to sponsor us, I will gladly shill for our overlord WizKid.
Okay, there you go. Spoken like a true gold
just...
dragon. Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know. Are gold dragons necessarily greedy in D&D lore?
I don't know. You're asking me about D&D lore. Dude, I got like some of the like I play D&D in that I'm like, yeah, there's dungeons and there are dragons. Like my biggest dig at the D&D movie was, oh, they made the Sword Coast kind of interesting because it is a very generic fantasy setting, at least in my head. And I will fully admit, I read the Drizzt Do'Urden books when I was much younger. I've not really explored the setting beyond those R.A. Salvatore novels at all. So I could be totally wrong about that. Yeah, I kind of just take what I like from different D&D settings and kind of mash it into my own thing, which is what I think a lot of people do.
Kitchen table's pretty common. So right now I'm playing in 3 different D&D campaigns. I know. I'm playing one game that is very strict lore accurate.
I see. Really? Okay. I've never played in like a super lore heavy tabletop game.
I haven't played in many of them, but I have one where it is a super lore accurate game. We're taking it very seriously, which is also kind of fun because we have 2 new players. So they're getting to experience a world that they're not familiar with. And interesting, both of those 2 girls, they're playing elves. So there's kind of this fun thing where there's almost like a disconnect for them of like, oh, they lived in almost Tolkien elven society, then showing up into the D&D, everybody kind of mingling together. These are the problems, these are the details of the world. So they're getting to kind of discover things. So I'd say the most inaccurate part is that they're kind of the Tolkien outsider elves versus modern Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe not previous editions, but modern Dungeons and Dragons is a lot like that D&D movie. All of the different races and species living together, very heterogeneous.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very copacetic.
Hope I used that word right. Not actually
Heterogeneously.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, either way, hopefully my context carries it if I use the wrong word. Anyways, and then I've got one game that a DM has taken over and he's been running his game out of, but was a concept I had 13 years ago. It's not a terribly unique concept, but I went, all right, there's a new universe that's coming to existence, and it steals from every other universe in order to populate itself. And so it's this goofy ass thing where you've got people from the real world Catholic Church is its own faith that exists and is battling against. And I mean, it's basically it's Ready Player One for D&D dorks. You've got the real world Catholic Church versus like there's a facehugger alien running around laying eggs in things in the middle of some jungle somewhere, and everyone just has to kind of figure it out. And so, I mean, that's like the most loosey goosey, do whatever the heck you feel like, tell weird stories, and it's kind of that ultimate you and your buddies, staying up until 2 a.m. going, dude, but what if?
Right. Or when you were a kid, like mashing action figures together.
Yes, that's really what that inspiration was going. When I was a little kid, my TMNT toys would fight against my Power Rangers, would fight against some Legos that I made into a big airplane, and I would smash them all together. And that's really what this universe is just everything and anything goes. Within that game, I'm playing a character that comes from like the Shadowrun world. And there's some other guy that comes from like something kind of akin to a Fallout. There's somebody else that comes from just our real world. There's somebody else that comes from silver screen Hollywood era. you'll even have like divergent timelines from the same base place. Like it's all just goofy fun, right?
Yeah.
And then the very last game that I'm playing is a module game that the module itself, we're taking these are the rules, this is the world as it's written. But I think I might be the only, well, no, that's not true. Not the only, that's an exaggeration. But we have at least one character, I'll say this, our cleric. He's running around as a Tempest cleric of Zeus. Just in our world, DM was like, yeah, screw it. The guy wants to have Zeus as his god. Zeus is in this world. And the whole Olympic pantheon is inside of our, whatever it is, like Curse of the Abyss or something campaign. So we're running around trying not to get munched on by people might actually be playing the campaign. So I'm not going to spoil anything.
So he's like turning into a swan to like sneak by demons and stuff like that. And
no, more like he'll, again, like everything he's doing is very Zeus themed. If we kill something that's like sentient enough to kind of pass his moral barometer, it reaches a certain threshold, he'll like go put the 2 coins on their eye. Like, I mean, he's leaning super heavy into this whole Greek pantheon thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, he doesn't have any transformation magic. He's just some cleric.
Gotcha.
Though interesting, he is an Araka, so, or Arakoa, or however you pronounce it.
That's another good. I mean, we're calling back to it so much, and it kind of timestamps the episode. But the bit in the D&D movie with Jarnathan, I think is what he's called, the
something
council
like
member. That's a good bit.
It was a dumb bit. It was a good bit. That was like really for me. That was the very first moment where I was like, this is exactly as dumb as I thought it was going to be, but I was wrong because I love it.
Right.
I didn't want to like it, which is a weird moment for me to notice, that I was like, oh, I'm going into this with the worst of intentions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really happily reminded, like, hey man, you gain nothing by something being bad. You gain a whole lot by it being good. And this was something that was really good.
Yeah.
Again, I loved that movie. I hope we see a sequel. I will say, and this isn't a spoiler or anything, there was no post credits, and I was shocked by that. I really thought we would get set up.
There is, but it's not one that matters.
Really?
It's just the zombie guy, like, still sitting in that, which I guess is technically mid.
Yeah, it was like a mid-credit joke stinger, right? But I was expecting some sort of like, and I can't wait until the next time that we're the Avengers.
Which, bring those back. Good.
And we didn't get that, but I was like, oh, I hope they do a second one. But this did stand alone really well.
Mm-hmm.
But I already see 100 places they could go. And I will say, everybody, when we said that we're going to start by talking about miniatures and not, stay tied down to it, this is exactly what we mean. I hope they do another one, and I hope it's a heist movie.
Yeah, make it like Ocean's 11. Make it Ocean's 11. The new heist every time.
I think that was really what made it good, is that this was a heist movie.
Yeah.
In a D&D skin.
Yeah.
Genius. Father's search for the daughter. The save the world element wasn't as big and over the top as it is in a lot of these $100 million movies.
They don't save the world until like the last 15 minutes of the movie. And they do it in a like, okay, I guess we'll save the world.
Yeah. It doesn't even feel like save the world. It feels like save this area.
Right.
Like, it wasn't even the most big existential, but it was, yeah, you're right. It almost felt like, okay, I mean, we can knock it out in the middle of the rest of the heist.
Yeah, and there's like the personal element of she like stabbed him in the back before. Like, she's the reason their lives are all fucked up. So they're gonna go stick it to weird skull lady.
I would caution that that's a spoiler, but that's revealed in the first 3.5 minutes of the movie that's the plot.
You look at this motherfucker and you're like, oh yeah, sure, she's good. She does good and normal things.
Yeah, it takes seconds. I think literally maybe the first 3.5 minutes of the movie, you're like, oh, she's gonna be our villain. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it was even the slightest bit more severe, I'd be like, oh, we should edit that out. I don't want to spoil this movie.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah.
That's like being like, hey, everybody, I'm watching this movie called Guardians of the Galaxy. Did you know that there's a raccoon?
Yeah, there is a raccoon.
It's about that obvious. You know what's interesting? So while we've been talking, I did take a look at the pre-painted adult gold dragon.
You did as well. Okay, because I took a look at him also.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I saw this before and this played some influence in my paint job without me
Mhm.
being super conscious of it, because there's a lot of similarities between what I did and what this is.
Yes, for folks listening, there's different miniatures for each age category of dragon. So this is the one like after the one we did. So it's bigger, it's more developed, like it's got now with detachable fire breathing action. He's got like that little plume you can either of fire coming out of his mouth, you can either put in there or not, I guess. I don't know. It comes pre-painted. So I don't really know how that works. That's interesting. That's cool. More miniatures with accessories.
So I'm a big miniatures with accessories guy. You've seen my Demon Prince, and he has a Space Marine accessory.
Yes, he
Uh,
does.
which was up to this point, until we started going, hey, let's do some miniature painting podcast, was probably my best ever miniature.
Uh-huh.
And God, I wish I could go back and do it again nowadays. But and maybe I will, though we have a new Demon Prince since then.
Yeah, we do have a new demon prince.
I think that's kind of an interesting thing, maybe worth talking about, just both of our kind of histories with painting. Now, you've traditionally been a lot more of the painter than I have.
Yeah.
The place
Yeah.
where I really have cut my teeth and really enjoyed the hobby the most is in conversions.
Yes.
I'm one of those psychos that does at least a little bit of conversion to virtually every model,
Mm-hmm.
which means I never actually paint or play.
True. I have a lot of friends that are like that prefer really that making of the sculpt of the model your own, which is cool. I always have liked the look of my finished painted models, no shade, TJ. So I always have focused more so on getting my models painted
Yeah.
rather than making sure they're the most cool, unique canvas I could potentially have.
I think this actually gets to something. Everybody in the world is familiar with the concept of imposter syndrome, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
One thing that I've really come to recognize about myself since trying to get back into this miniature hobby for the last, basically since you and I were friends, because I'd really retired from this whole thing, and then you and I talking convinced me to go buy myself a little chaos starter box for the like fourth time that I've purchased this box and then given all of it away. Now I still own it and I didn't paint any of it. But what always happens to me is that I get really excited about the idea of
Mission accomplished.
yeah, I get really excited about the idea of I'm gonna play Warhammer again, or I'm gonna play this, or I'm gonna play that, and I'm gonna paint everything, and I'm a pretty okay painter, but I want to be so much better than I am.
Hmm.
And so what ends up happening is that I don't paint.
Right. Which is the
I can't be confronted with my own shortcomings as a painter if I just put it off.
right. Right.
And that is I hope this connects to somebody out there that's listening, because man, I got to tell you, I've been putting off painting for the last, I don't know, 8 months or something until we finally got together and started doing this. And I'm so happy. I'm so happy that I've started painting. I started knocking out models that we've been talking about, trying to get some models going for this podcast.
Hmm.
And I've been working on each of those, if not in tandem with this, then immediately when I was done with this, I just started getting to work because
Yeah.
I really fell in love with painting again. And am I throwing around more money than I have on getting like, oh, I think this would be a great supply. I am. But the difference is I'm using them now
Yes.
and I'm being brave.
Yeah.
And that's something, again, I've always really struggled with. I felt great painting Seraphon back when they were still called Lizard Men, because I was able to go, all right, I painted him blue. Now I dry brushed a little, and nobody else that I play games with is even at dry brushing yet. So mine looks good and I feel confident. And that was good enough.
Yeah.
It's been a very interesting thing. And I'll say too, I've gotten so just inspired by what we've been doing already that I just went out and bought some learn how to draw books, and I'm going to be trying to put some hours into those here and there as well, because I just like doing artsy stuff.
Yeah. It's fun.
But I've always been too afraid to not be able to do something and have it look the way
Hmm.
that I want it to.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I got when I started getting into this a little before I went to university was just you have to do it to get better. And you have to try things, and they won't always work. And especially, like, we are in a renaissance of this hobby. It's really cool. But a kind of downside of that is, like, I call it the Matt Mercer effect, because when he showed the D&D community what like a DM could really like do, I think a lot of people got inspired but also intimidated. I think
Interesting.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of really good painting content that is really good for learning, and it's incredible. Like Pete the Wargamer, the stuff over at Artists Opus. There's a million people, primarily I follow on YouTube, that are just so good at it.
I mean, enough so that you sat here and just listed a couple that you like,
Mm-hmm.
didn't mention the ones that I know are your favorite, and I'm sitting here with 5 or 6 in my head of the ones that I most often watch, and none of them cross over at all.
Right.
That's wild.
But they can also come across as very intimidating.
Certainly.
You kind of think, well, how could I ever do that? And the answer is you just have to keep trying. And it also depends on the model. That's the thing I kind of learned, like, to kind of loop back to today's model, the dragon. Did it inspire me to bring my A game? Am I going to pull out all the stops for
Nope.
the young gold dragon from WizKids? No, I am not.
And that's the thing. I went into it expecting to pull out all the stops, and then I didn't.
Yeah, which is disappointing.
Again, and I did try to be brave with this, and I'm going to give a shout out to a very successful miniature painter who it's silly for me to even say shout out because he gets, tens of thousands,
Right.
views, and this is our first episode of anything ever.
Well, he's gonna get the small talk bump.
So I really, in particular, like Ninjon. He is a great painter. I think there are some better painters out there, but his content is really focused on try new stuff.
Yeah.
Don't always go with the most orthodox. He's always kind of showing me at least techniques that I'd never heard of or thought of. And I think it was there where I just grabbed that idea of be brave. Be brave with it. It's okay. It's just paint. Without naming specific YouTubers, I started to get kind of a shitty idea about things like contrast paint or even metallics, which I've never done an MM, but I got it in my head that, oh, if you paint it with a metallic, then you're this or that. And it's because I'd gotten kind of snooty from listening to people who were really good doing things that I couldn't even do. I personally find his content so inspirational. Yeah, he does NMM, and he'll teach you a little bit of how to do it, but he'll also use metallics and tell you when he likes to use them. Or he did a whole video about dry brushing where he called out that a lot of people look down on dry brushing. And then I learned additional stuff about dry brushing and went, wow, this is a way cooler technique than I'm beginning to give it credit for.
Oh, yeah, it's so versatile. It's the reason I chose to really flex my knowledge of what I know personally about dry brushing for this gold dragon.
Yeah, I feel like now I'm just sitting here telling everybody how much I love Ninjon, and I do. During that video, I learned what was probably the most important thing for me to learn with dry brushing. Don't wipe off your paint on paper towels.
Yeah, I used to do that all the goddamn time.
Yeah, so instead I have this nice, slightly porous, I don't even know if it's like compressed wood or compressed cardboard. It's some sort of something that came in like packaging somewhere along the line of my life. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why I have it, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's perfect. It's so good for this. And it makes my dry brush look a lot less chalky.
Yeah.
And I learned that from his video. And that allowed me to go, no, dry brushing is cool. I don't need to be a dick about this. It's a cool technique. Use it when it's appropriate.
Yeah. I use it from stuff like this gold dragon to stuff that I'm like really taking my time on, like my Angron model for my world eaters.
Which looked great, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
I was showing that off to my D&D table last night. Like, dude, Isn't this the grossest thing?
Yeah, I am very much looking forward to getting him on the table. The Ghost of New Cernia. I will post some photos, mayhaps, if we get a like Instagram or something started for this, which that would probably be prudent.
Yeah, we should probably do all that, if not before we air this episode, almost immediately after.
Yeah.
That's
Riveting behind the scenes talk with the boys.
yeah, riveting behind the scenes talk. I believe you and I met in a social media class,
Yes, we did.
and neither of us like using social media, which is
Oh god, yeah.
the greatest irony.
Yep, ironic. To kind of loop back to a different part of this particular miniature, what do you think of the fantasy of I'm painting a dragon? Does that hit with this miniature?
Could you explain that a little more? I'm not 100% sure that I got you there.
So I guess what I mean is like when you sit down and you're like, I'm going to paint a dragon, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a big one for a lot of nerds and people that like doing this hobby like we do. Do you, when you look at the model, when you look at it fully painted, how do you think your players would respond to this model on the table? Because obviously, like, I'm not saying they're going to like revolt and be like, it's terrible, how dare you paint this thing for us, but you know,
No, I know what you mean.
yeah, I'm just wondering how hard it like hits.
So I have perhaps a weird answer to that. So especially with one of my games, I play with a group that almost all of them play 40K. So all of them do paint models.
Mm-hmm.
But in none of my games, and in fact, in none of my games ever in nearly 20 years of playing D&D, has anyone besides me shown up with a hand-painted model. Once further, in one of those games for Christmas, I built Hero Forge minis for everyone. Actually, two of the games. I've done Hero Forge minis for everyone at the table.
Right.
And for one of the games, I painted their miniatures for them and gave them all painted miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody's ever shown up with painted stuff that I didn't paint.
Gotcha.
Outside of that, the only models that we have on the table are back in 3.5, you could purchase these like blind booster packs of models.
Oh, they still do those.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah, Pathfinder started doing them a lot.
And so that's where all of our minis came from. So we've been playing with the same, frankly, I mean, just dog shit quality miniatures forever.
Yeah, just like the same 5 skeletons, and those skeletons have played the part of like any medium-sized humanoid.
Yes.
You run into, yeah.
Humanoid or non-humanoid. I mean, it's just, does it take up the right number of squares? Now, a long-term goal of mine is to expand my model library so that if I'm playing Curse of Strahd, somebody can say, you encounter 6 wolves, and I go, here they are.
Oh, yeah, that's so cool.
And have 6 wolves. Like, that's the dream,
Mm-hmm.
but it is just so much work that I just haven't gotten there. Plus, it's expensive.
It is.
It's just very prohibitively expensive.
And, like, especially with the nature of D&D as a game, there is technically no guarantee you're ever going to use those models.
Yeah, so the reason I bring up Strahd is one of the games I've been playing is Strahd, the one that's like the most like strictly accurate, actually. For that game, we had this idea, we went through, the DM took out details, names, and any sort of semblance of where they would come up, but started just giving me like generically, we need to have up to 12 wolves and all these things. And so I was trying to keep up with that and was just like, man, I just can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's a heavy lift for a once a week game. I would need to sit here and prep that for 6 months or a year before we ever started playing, actually make that work.
Right. That's always kind of a tricky thing with D&D because things move quickly and there's no guarantee that that big monster you painted for a, semi-optional encounter that you're pretty sure is going to happen, it just might not.
Yeah, well, and I've kind of got this fantasy of, man, wouldn't it be cool to paint a dragon? And I guess maybe this even kind of gets to some of what you were saying. No, my paint a dragon itch isn't fulfilled.
No.
Which is why now I'm working on this absurd.
Yeah, I've seen it. It is a giant chunk of resin.
Yeah, it is, I think, possibly even larger than what is by the rules colossal.
Oh yeah.
It's
So it's like gargantuan or whatever.
gargantuan smaller than colossal.
Oh, gotcha.
Those designations I feel like mattered a lot more. Maybe it was just
I've never gotten a game far enough along that stuff that's routinely gargantuan or colossal shows up.
yeah. So you've got like your smaller than small stuff, which that's its own thing. Like you're tiny and blah blah blah. But you small, medium, large, huge, gargantuan, colossal. And then there were Unearthed Arcana rules, I believe, for like colossal plus plus, which just gets, very silly. And those designations, especially, that gets into like kind of older 3.5 stuff and optional rules and this, that.
Right.
Huge, gargantuan, colossal. I think colossal, it takes up like a 8x8 grid or something. And so, yeah, I mean, that would be at least 8 inches. I feel like my guy's bigger than that. I could be wrong, but at least his tail and some of his accoutrement would be hanging off of that 8x8.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, anyways, eventually I still want to do that, which is a long way to say no, my dragon itch isn't scratched. But my table, any table I put this model down on, they'd probably go, ooh, if I hadn't been sending them pictures the whole time I was painting it.
Right. For reference, the Icons of the Realms Tiamat is 14 inches tall, 28 inches wide.
So that's the interesting is, so colossal, any of these designations, like colossal, I believe is a 64-foot, like in universe, I think is 64 feet and up is colossal.
Uh-huh. So I'm looking at this miniature for $400 on Amazon. I can see mold lines here in the product photos.
Well, here's the thing. I do want to be pretty upset about that and say, man, that's too expensive of a model for mold lines. But at the exact same time, I have to be fair and say there are really expensive Forge World things that come out warped.
That's true. That's true.
So, and that's I want to be clear.
But at least I feel like I can control those.
I want to be clear. This is me saying both of those things are kind of unacceptable.
Yeah.
At that price point, how about this? If I buy an airbrush that's $400, that thing better be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
If it's not like a car at $400, I'm not accepting error. I'm going to be upset about it. Yeah, I guess, I mean, that's one of the advantages of an assembly kit. The disadvantage is you have to sit there and assemble crap. The advantage is you get to work with each piece.
That is true. Yes. And if you're the kind of person like you are, we know you like assembling models.
I love the assembly.
You like kit bashing. So that probably how much did that impact the enjoyment process of kind of how this model went for you? Because it comes out of the box, you start painting.
Significantly.
Yeah.
Very, very significantly. And I would say the reason it impacted it wasn't that I didn't get to sit there and goof around with the guy. It's that I didn't get to goof around with him and the quality was subpar. If I didn't have those mold line issues, if I didn't have the huge gaps that I had to try to fill, I think I would have taken the whole thing as a nice, refreshing, sparkling water. It just a nice, like, oh, it's nice to not have to worry about those things this time.
Uh-huh.
Normally, when I'm doing these conversions and spending all this time, I don't have to do it. It's that I like to do it. And with this, it felt like, oh, I have to fix this thing. It felt like I purchased something that was broken, and it was my job to repair it. That's where it left a sour taste.
Yeah, and two, like, it's weird because I'm looking at like some of the other Icons of the Realms figurines as we talk, and they don't all seem to have this issue. Like the Gargantuan Tarrasque, I see where his mold lines are, but they're in very strategic spots. They're covered very well.
It even looks like the pre-done paint job on that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's a pretty good pre-done paint job.
Yeah, like they got a really good, like, kind of nice natural highlighting and fading. Like it's blended well.
And it's $100 cheaper than Tiamat.
Yeah, no, I mean that's actually that's a pretty sweet looking model actually.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of weird, and I'm probably misremembering this, but when I was when I was a kid, I'm older than you, so I had a lot more physical toys than you did.
Yes. Yes. If anyone was wondering who's Boomer, who's Zoomer, I'm Zoomer. He's Boomer.
I'm not a fucking boomer. How dare you?
My
I'm on the young end of millennial, you dick.
and I'm technically, I think, old Gen Z. I don't know what
Yeah,
is
I
2000.
think.
What is time?
Yeah. Who really cares except to say
Yeah,
fuck you. Um,
yeah.
but like me and my buddies had like Godzilla toys and stuff, and I a little
Oh
bit feel like
god.
our badass Toys R Us Godzilla toys were painted as well as these.
Uh huh.
Like even something like the Tarisk.
Yeah, I don't want to say that, but yeah.
And that was a $40 toy versus a $300 toy.
Yeah,
But also,
yeah.
I have to be fair. I'm probably misremembering that.
Now you're making me want to paint like a Godzilla miniature.
Oh, we definitely should. You and I recently talked about Godzilla, just
We did.
not while being recorded, and we talked Godzilla, and it was great. We should definitely do a Godzilla miniature in the future.
Yes.
I would love that.
Oh, I could talk. I could talk forever about Godzilla.
Well, you know me. I mean, like I said, I got started with this hobby because of lizardmen. I like painting lizards. I like painting tyrannids. I like painting demons. Like I like monsters. I think monsters are awesome.
Yeah,
I don't like painting people. People suck.
yeah, dudes. What, you're not a big skin tone guy?
Specifically, it's not even just like skin tone. It's eyes. It's painting people's eyes and faces. That is a challenge that I have yet to be able to rise to and match. I believe you're the one that got me. I think it was for my birthday. You got me a Fabius Bile miniature.
Yes, I did.
And as you know, again, I'm a conversion junkie, so I converted the crap out of that guy. Actually, it wasn't even just like conversion work. That would have been easier. I sat there and gave him a shave. I hated his old man hair, so I wanted to give him a Lex Luthor head and kind of gave him some like burn victim kind of look. You know, wanted to be a little extra scary.
Right, right.
You know, part of it is that I was using bad paints that were they were just old,
Mhm.
and I shouldn't have been using them. Part of there were several issues. Yeah, I made like the most badass looking, you know, that lab coat cape thing that he
Right.
has. That whole just like human leather he's wearing looks
Human leather.
awesome. I mean, it is.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know. It's just a funny way to put it.
It looks great. And then his face looks like I drew it with a Crayola.
The
It's
classic.
so bad.
The classic. Yeah, faces are tricky, man, because they're so easy to tip into the uncanny valley. Like it's
That's
so
just
easy to
it.
do it. I'm not even very good at it. A lot of the times, I will just like wash faces so the face kind of looks like it's in shadow, and I'll be like, okay, that's good. We're good. Like, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. I do need to make an addendum. I don't think Colossal exists in 5e. I think they just call it Gargantuan.
Oh, interesting.
Now that I'm just looking at this, because I'm sitting here looking at the Tiamat still. You know, I keep bouncing between that and the Tarisk, both of which were classically in my 3-5 days Colossal, at least. I mean, Tiamat,
Yeah, keyword big.
I mean, Tiamat, I could be wrong, but I don't think he was even supposed to be statted most of the time because he's like a god.
Well, they always do the like it's the avatar of Tiamat thing, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not
Well, and they did have the deities and demigods book, which did put stat blocks on gods, which
whack.
when I was a kid we thought was cool. As an adult, I go never put stat blocks on a god. The same way that if you're playing Shadowrun, you don't stat block dragons. If it has a stat block, it can be killed because they're not supposed to be something.
Right.
That's the whole point.
Yes. If it bleeds, we can kill it. To quote a certain political figure.
So yeah, I guess I have to roll back and say I think I was wrong. I don't know that Colossal's a designation anymore, and that's I guess and you know this too. I only started playing 5th edition in the last like 6 months or so.
Yeah.
I've been keeping on like 3.5 and Pathfinder 1. Even my Shadowrun game, I play Shadowrun 5th edition, not 6th edition. But there's a good reason for that one in particular. Shadowrun 6 is just really not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I tried it. At least I was brave enough to try 6e and go, ah, man.
Well, I'm still out here trying to convince people that fourth edition D&D was not like a total bust, and it has some good things actually, and I am regularly stoned as a witch, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you've been on the you've been part of those stoning parties.
No.
So
I've openly told you what I thought was good about fourth edition. I just also tell you what I thought was bad about fourth edition. And
yes,
and
negative criticism, therefore stoning.
and but look, when you're being stoned, people don't go, "Yes, but I think you have a very nice hat," as they,
That's true.
I offered, I think, a fair and balanced criticism. And if you
Mhm.
or any of the other 6 people in the world who like fourth edition want
Yeah,
to,
don't fuck us fourth edition fans. There's like maybe 10 of us, maybe.
if you guys want to come at me, I'll take you all on.
Yeah, I think you could probably handle us in a fight. There's not very many of us. Yep. Rally dude, I am pretty sure the like Warhammer Fantasy Battle players outnumber us like 2 to 1 at
But yeah,
least.
here I am, the wise old Grognard going, boy, oh boy, you know what I sure like is Warhammer Fantasy. I can't wait for that to come back.
Don't you mean Warhammer the Old World is the new
Sure.
promo material?
Yeah, whatever dumb thing we need to call it.
They revealed new Bretonnian and Tomb King models this weekend at Warhammer Fest. Yeah.
My buddy that I got into D&D with, him and I were like the first 2 in the group to be like, let's try Dungeons and Dragons. And then he was also the guy that I was like, let's try Warhammer, because there's a Games Workshop in our local mall. So we're, mall rat middle schoolers going to go see like a movie and eat an Auntie Anne's pretzel or something. We're like, I don't know what those toys are, but they look pretty sweet. And I hear people yelling WOG, and I'm just weird enough to think that's cool.
And then, of course, you open the box of toys and you're like, what the fuck? I gotta put them together? Like,
Well, no, that was the really cool thing is so, and I don't know if Games Workshop still does this, or I guess Warhammer, they've recently changed their name to, the
yes,
stores are now just called Warhammer,
they have become the Warhammer.
which I get, but it's weird. Yeah, I get it, but it's weird. Anyways, the Games Workshop, they would be like, oh yeah, Saturday or Sundays, we do drop-in games for 40K and fantasy, and you don't have to bring your own miniatures. You can use ours.
Yeah, I don't know if they do that anymore, but that is cool.
What was so crazy is, so fantasy is really where we cut our teeth. He got more into 40K than I did. I've never been a big 40K guy. It's been really since our friendship that I've gotten into 40K.
Mm-hmm.
I was into fantasy. We'd show up, it would be a Sunday, and they'd push together multiple game tables sometimes that took up, I mean, most of the floor space of the entire Games Workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'd have these crazy, like, 6v6 fights.
Jeez.
Or something.
Talk about a lot of dice. Oh gosh.
Tons of dice. I mean, you showed up at 11 and you left when the store closed at like 6 or 7.
And you probably weren't anywhere close to finishing the game.
You usually did, but because we weren't going out there with like these 2,000 point armies. Instead, it would be like, I remember really specifically my first time ever getting to like actually play outside of the little like, oh, we have this little demo station set up. Let me obviously and intentionally try to lose to you so I can get you to play the game for the first time. 12-year-old kid. Those like class, like they have like the new one coming out of Space Marines versus
Right.
Tyranids. Like they've always had those types of boxes. Anyways, we show up on our Sunday, and they gave me I think it was called a Hellfire Cannon.
Oh, that's old Chaos Demons model.
Yeah, and so back then it was just chaos.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so you have like your 3 or 4 little, I think they were like dwarves who were manning it, and then if all those guys die, the cannon just goes haywire and starts meleeing everything as though it's like a demon prince or something. Old rules, I don't know what it does nowadays, but back then it was, there is a demon who is unwillingly trapped inside of this thing, and it can just go haywire and start mulching everybody.
Yeah, very Warhammer.
Yes, and back then they were using scatter dice and called shots. So it was, all right, I'm going to fire in that direction, 62 inches or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd roll your scatter dice. And that was my first time playing Warhammer, and I had the most fun I had ever had in my life. I loved it. And I was weirdly good at that distance guessing game.
Uh-huh. Something that is unfortunately, well, I would not say unfortunately, but you, because you were good at it, might say unfortunately, has kind of left the gaming aspect of the hobby.
Yeah. Well, and I happened to be pretty good at it. I was good at visualizing that distance because I was a like seventh or eighth grade boy, and so I was really familiar with what like 2 inches looked like. And so I would just kind of, oh, how many instances of that 2 inches is this?
That's funny. Hey, yeah, it gets dubs. Doesn't matter how it
Yep.
gets dubs. Put it up on the board. Come at me, nerds. I'm winning. Stay mad.
Yeah, and it worked. I was crushing dudes. It was great.
Oh, that's funny.
Yep, it was awesome. It was great. But so yeah, there was that, and then immediately it was like, I like lizard men. Lizard men are so cool. And then my buddy was playing Bretonians, and I was like, why would you play that? That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, you're playing the French. Why would you want to play the French?
You freaking idiot. That's just people and horses.
Yeah, of course.
Bro, I don't even think I knew it was French. I mean, back then I was like, oh, London, the capital of France. Like I wasn't exactly on any of that. I was just going, why would you play people?
Yeah, there's lizard men.
There's lizards and rats and elves and anything else. Why would you play a person? That's so stupid. Even the other, there are two different humans armies, and the other humans at least get some dwarves. You dummy. What are you doing?
Yeah, you can play fancy humans, spiky humans, vaguely Chinese humans, vaguely Russian humans. Like there's a lot running around the old world from back in the day. And then they all just got mulched into one faction in Age of Sigmar.
Yeah.
Like, isn't it funny to think about like dwarves and dark elves from fantasy being part of the same army now?
Are they?
Yeah, yeah.
What?
Greywater
Oh.
Fastness and yeah, they're both cities of Sigmar. Yeah.
Yeah, I get you. I have some Sigmar models. I've never played. I don't know
Yep.
anything about the lore because I was just like, yeah, I just like my lizard men. And then they were like, yeah, your lizards are actually like angel demon nightmares or something now.
They're
I was
ancient
like, oh.
aliens. Yeah.
I really liked the part when they were just dinosaurs.
Yeah.
That like, and the old gods made dinosaurs, and they said, hang out in these temples, bro.
Yeah.
And then the lizards are like, cool, yeah, we like these temples. This is great. And then these rats are like, I want what's in those temples. And we're like, no, we'll kill you for that. And then Chaos is like, oh, we sure hate those gods. We'd like to come in there and ruin all that. And we're like, well, we were literally put here to make sure that you didn't. So no. And like that was the whole thing.
Godzilla screeching noises and dice rolling intensifies.
Yeah, and it was dumb fun, and I feel like back then they had some of that like Aztec Mayan stuff, that South American,
Right, but it wasn't always like
but it wasn't nearly what it is in modern day. Back then, it was a lot more of just like,
yeah, like have you seen some of the new stuff they're previewing for them? It does look good. It does look good.
yeah, it looks so good. It looks so good. But back again, when I was a kid, it was just like, oh yeah, there's a tiny bit of it, but these are mostly just
Yeah,
dinosaurs.
now they are definitely like Mesoamerican inspired dinosaurs riding dinosaurs, which I'm glad we're leaning into dinosaurs riding dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs riding dinosaurs is great, and I mean, from the cold ones that existed when I played to the cold ones that came out when I tried getting back into it and went, huh?
Yeah, those are ugly.
To what we're about to get. I really like the new guys. Well, yeah, and so I've told you this before, but so I was really into fantasy, and then
Mm-hmm.
our Games Workshop was at the mall. I was at the food court one day, like in between games, taking a little break, and without me or my friends noticing, somebody jacked my whole
You
arm.
have told me about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so when I tried getting back to Lizardmen again, I mean, just during that time, between the ages of like 12 to 14 or something, it was like, oh, well, I mean, one, who steals from kids? Come on.
Yeah, and like you're grabbing like a army of like pewter lizard men. Like who how do you even get that thing out the mall?
Yeah, one like the carrying case that they used to sell back then just kind of looked like a plastic briefcase.
Uh-huh.
And I bought the like actual Games Workshop one, which was more money than I had. Like any one of these things, we would skip lunches and collect our lunch money to
Right.
make purchases. Otherwise, it was begging your parents for weeks so that you could buy that $15 blister pack with one Cold One Rider in it,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and you need 8 of them to field.
Oh, the joys of being a child with no spending money. Dude. Yeah, God. I didn't come to Warhammer till I pretty regularly had money of my own to spend, but yeah, it's definitely one of those things where I'm still like, okay, let's not go too crazy to myself. These things take time to build, and paint, and having a big closet full of my unpainted yet to be loved models is just something I try not to do.
I am so bad about it. I always
So
have been.
I'm not saying I'm totally innocent.
I don't hold on to my money as well as I should because I go, that sounds awesome. And then I'm like, okay, cool. I just went full in on this. I've got, 1,500 points of a new army. Time to get home and build and paint.
Oh boy, oh what have I
Yeah.
done? Yeah.
Oh, my
Yep.
friends invited me to play a game of Dota. I guess I should go do that instead now for the next 8 months. And then not then I'll, and then the rules update really stinks and I don't want to play this army anymore. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's the cycle of mini war games like that. I was thinking until very recently, there haven't been a lot of like war games where dragons are like super common.
Yeah.
Like they exist, right? But it's usually like one model, or I feel like in these last couple of years we've seen a lot more new dragon or dragon adjacent models from like Games Workshop.
Models but not whole
Yeah,
armies,
yeah,
right? Stormcast have their, what are they? Like storm drakes or something?
something like that.
I
Yeah,
know orcs, or at least I think orcs have at least one dragon model in their line.
that is true. They do have the Angry Cabbage. That is one of my favorite models. That thing rules.
Yeah, there are a few dragons here and there, and I think it's interesting, right? Because there's a good reason for it, which is a dragon is supposed to be that force of nature,
Right.
and you can't have everything in your army being a force of nature.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. The armies that are like, it's a bunch of giants. I kind of wish those armies were just, it's a bunch of dragons.
Like ogre kingdoms.
No, like the Gargants or whatever they're called. They're like big giants.
They're like what?
They're big. They're big giants.
Oh, beeg. I
Big.
was like bees.
Yeah, they're bees.
Bees? They're just bugs.
Yeah, they're big bugs. I mean, hey, that'd be cool. Giant bugs. That's basically Tyranids, but
I was gonna say that's you're just asking for fantasy Tyranids, which dumb little kid thing. Like I said, so I've always liked monsters, right? And I had kind of talked to the guys at the Games Workshop when I was a kid, and they're talking to kids, and they're all like 18 themselves,
right,
but in my mind they were like adults. I'm sure they're 18 or 24, something like that.
right.
When I learned a little bit about Tyranids, just because everybody else was getting into 40K, I was like, so they're kind of the only good guys in 40K, and they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, because you said that like all these other guys, they're like jerks, right? And like part of why I like Lizardmen is they're good guys.
Uh-huh.
They're like, all right, why are Tyranids good guys? I'm like, well, they're not like the Emperor. The Emperor's a jerk. He does bad stuff. The Space Marines do bad. Everyone does bad stuff. But like the Tyranids, they're just animals.
Right.
They're not. There's not like a plan. They're just it's like getting mad at a bunch of dogs. They're neutral.
Mhm.
They're the only neutral guys.
They're
which,
hungry.
in this world, the neutral kind of means good. So I think Tyranids are the good guys. They're like, yeah, sure, kid.
Yeah.
Are you going to buy them or not?
Yeah. Okay, cool. If you think that, now, does that mean you are going to purchase these models?
Yeah, I mean, all the classic fantasy figures of heroism, like Leviathan and behemoths.
Yeah. Gorgons, yeah.
Yeah, all of the classic
Good
the
guy
heroes.
tropes, yeah.
Yeah.
The Tyranids, they just want to go into Tashi Station to consume some biomass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I still kind of a little bit stand by it.
Oh yeah, they're definitely
there are some guys out there who I would say are more the good guys than I used to understand. Like salamanders, lamenters, guys like that. I'm like, no, okay, they're actually pretty good.
We stand. This is a lamenter's household. If
Yep.
you know who they are, you know the struggle. If you don't, they're probably the only halfway decent person Space Marines.
Again, salamanders are good too, man. How dare you?
Well, they as long as you're not an Eldar child.
You don't need to be an Eldar child. If you're an Eldar child, you should have thought about not being an Eldar child. That's fine.
Sounds like a skill issue.
Yeah. We had our little break. Everybody got a little water. Everybody, meaning all two of us. We're kind of winding down here. At this point, I want to ask: do you have any like memorable dragon moments in D&D or other like tabletop stuff?
Memorable dragon moments.
I'll even open it up a bit and say, let's even throw in video games, just other cool stuff. Tabletop's the core of it, but
the thing, yeah. So dragons have always been a fantasy creature that is like really cool to me. I think that's part of why the model felt a little right? Because it didn't really evoke that like, oh, this thing is rad, to use a very contemporary and modern phrase.
With it?
Yeah, with it. Hip. I did not get jiggy with this model. I don't know if they were officially licensed by Wizards of the Coast, but when I was young and getting into D&D, there were books called Such and Such Dragon Codex, and they were generally like a little novel about some like usually teenager in like a Forbidden Lands / Forgotten Realms-esque setting, having some adventure that had something to do with a dragon. They didn't do them for every chromatic or metallic dragon, and I think they were technically not licensed by Wizards of the Coast, despite using artwork that was very clearly
inspired by.
Yeah, inspired by. Let's go with that. They were very instrumental in my love of fantasy and my love of dragons in particular. I don't remember much about the Gold Dragon Codex. I think the Gold Dragon Codex was a murder mystery, and they really played into Gold Dragon's abilities to shape change, which is something they do a lot in D&D, because if they're showing up, they're usually in the like Yoda role. They're very often like mentors to your party, and they're not always super obvious about being dragons. The other one that was tangentially related to dragons in more of like a concrete sense were the like Aragon books. Do you remember those?
Yeah. So those were coming out, I think when that kid was writing them, he was like the same age as me.
Christopher Polini was 18. I loved those books.
No, okay. He was 18, so he was older than me.
Yeah, partially because of that fantasy of like someone being, he was older than me substantially by the time I was reading the books. But the fact that he had like put out this body of work when he was 18, I am recently rereading those books. They sound like fantasy written by an 18-year-old, but they have a lot of really cool, they have dragons as main characters, which is something I always really like, because they're such like an alien kind of like mental concept. Like if you add these creatures that lived forever, they're magical, they're extremely physically powerful, they can fly. How do they interact with the world compared to like squishy humans? And those books were just a lot of fun. So I'm rereading them right now. Future episodes will probably get updates on my reread of a childhood series if I am able to stick with it, because I don't read as much as I should anymore. And whenever dragons come up, I'm sure I'll be like, oh right, Aragon, da da da. The coolest like tabletop moment with dragons for me was I ran a dungeon in Pathfinder First Edition. I believe this dungeon is in the Dragon's Demand, which takes your characters from level 1 to level 7, and the kind of midway gearing up to fight the dragon dungeon, where you get a lot of the cool magic items that your party will have in their final assault on the dragon's lair, is actually in the body of a great worm dragon that is like dead in a swamp nearby. And the locals buried the hero that slew the dragon and all her like dragon slaying treasure in the dragon's body. So it's like this tomb constructed around the bones of a great worm black dragon, which is really cool.
That is really neat.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, that's way more interesting than my tabletop dragon experience.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, on the note of Aragorn, when I was a kid, I was in like middle school when the movie came out.
Oh God, don't get me started on the movie, or we're gonna be here another hour.
Yeah, I'll give the very short version. I'm sure it'll turn into a full rant at some point here. We had crazy windstorms, and back then, going to see the midnight release of a movie actually meant 12:01 on
right
on a Thursday or Friday or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And there we are, middle school boys. We convince our friend's dad to take us, and the power just keeps flickering and flickering and flickering. We don't even get to start the movie until after 1, as we're in a movie theater that just keeps dying and coming back and dying and coming back. The power regularly stops,
Ugh.
like cuts out during the movie.
It didn't restart the movie, did it? When the
No,
power cut?
no.
Oh, thank God.
No, because they would, like, whoever's like up there running the booth would just, I mean, frankly, I'll be real, back then they might have still been using actual like project film reels,
Yeah, maybe.
and not digital. I'm not sure. I don't know, they might have been. You'd go 15 minutes before you get to come back for 3 more minutes of the movie being horrible. Dude, I don't think we left that theater until 3 or 4 in the morning. I legitimately don't even know if I stayed awake for the whole movie.
Yeah. Huh. I always forget that John Malkovich is at the very beginning of that movie. Just randomly. He's not in it, really, at all. But he's on the poster.
I'll take your word for it. I have no memory of the movie. All I have memory of is going to the movie. But yeah, so anyways, kind of my final thing here with my actual encounter was, I always thought dragons were cool. I really wanted my party to fight dragons. So when we were, young D&D kids, probably like early high school, maybe freshman, sophomore year, possibly even still middle school age, we were playing, and we had one guy who was really into min-maxing characters. And back then, none of us were min-maxers, and he convinced me to let him play the Griffin Rider class, which I believe was in a particular Forgotten Realms book. Could be wrong about that, but it was like a very specific class or prestige class.
This was 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5.
Okay.
And for the life of me, I don't even know if this was an actual rule or just something he convinced us of. But basically, there was a bunch of baloney going on where when he was charging with his lance, then it did a crit automatically. It did like these ×4 crits and then ×8 crits somehow. And I don't really remember how all of it went down. But we were coming to this big climactic moment, not to be the end of the campaign, but kind of the end of this arc of the campaign. I had them trying to like, go do some quests for some queen, and it's going to turn out there's like this god Ouroboros kind of thing that they got to deal with, blah blah blah. Anyways, they got to fight a dragon, and he rolls the highest initiative, and he, on his griffin, charges at my dragon, and turn one's it.
That's the classic.
Yep. Just, I don't really remember all the baloney. Again, this was 15 years ago or whatever it was now.
The dice giveth and the dice taketh.
I'm sure he was cheating. Like, there's no way that should be able to happen. Well, I don't know. 3-5 was busted. You could do crazy stuff. Man, that was one of those like, oh, okay, everybody.
I didn't plan anything else because
Yeah, I guess our game's over for today. Shit. One thing that's cool is like modern D&D content, I think, has pushed more and more people to like have open conversations with their DMs and like actively try not to play the game. Yes, it's a less adversarial game than it used to be. Back then, it really felt like players were trying to get one over on the DM, or the DM was trying to get one over on the players. And that was one of those moments where, as the DM, a player got one over on me, and I was real unhappy about it. And I don't know if we ever played that game again. Maybe we did like one more mission. Or session, mission. Jesus, that's really Shadowrunny.
Yeah.
Okay, so Cannon, I wanted to ask you one last question here to kind of wrap up this podcast.
Okay. Yep.
You already know it's coming.
I do.
Plain and simple. Now that you've done the dragon, you've got hindsight. What would you do different? And I suppose too, what would you do the same? That's also worth talking about.
I would still go at this dry brushing.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I would do though. Painting it like the statue from the D&D movie.
Yeah, I remember that.
I think could have lent itself to the model's pose better because it's a very static pose.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been different than what I feel like I kind of just took the easy way out and was like, yeah, it's a gold dragon. I painted it gold. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I still did the dry brushing and I did some recess shading and I did the OSL on the eyes, but I feel like that marble gray with maybe some gold accents in certain spots could have really made this model pop as its own thing than a kind of what I would say is a middling dragon model for like an actual dragon.
Mm-hmm.
I think this could be a really good animated statue of a dragon miniature.
Yeah, no, I like what you're saying there, and especially if it looked like the animated statue, the problems that I think I had with the make of the model would instead lend itself to that story quite well. Why aren't the wings attached very well? Well, you know, it's a statue.
Yeah, it's an ancient statue.
Yeah, it's some old thing. Yeah, I definitely see that.
That is what I would do different.
Yeah, as for me, what's interesting is I'm really happy with most of what I did.
Mm-hmm.
My changes would largely be, the same things I tried to do, but a little bit better. For example, the 3D resin to building apps.
Yeah.
I should have gone classic, should have gone for green stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would have gotten much better results doing that. It was just an experiment that I wanted to try. And it ended up diminishing some of the places where there really were good quality on this model. Even where I did some repairs, like for example, that like break in the tail that we talked about, where those fins just aren't aligned properly. I kind of wish I had just cut that whole section out and even green stuffed that and just made that a more flawless connecting point. My OSL that I did on the base, I probably would have stuck more orange and less red. That would really be a big one for me, and maybe even trying harder to figure out if there was a way that I could remove him or get him away from that base for a while.
Right.
Like if I'd come into it with that plan, I think I could have gotten him off the base.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have had to disguise some amount of cut lines or something, but I could have come up with something.
This model comes with a circular base. It does not fit on it well. That is another thing I don't think we talked about a whole lot because he is like on a base ostensibly.
Well, that's the weird thing too, right? Is that they don't even give you like a standard base like you'd expect. It's just some rock that doesn't actually fit properly on a D&D mat.
Well, yours came with like a circular base, right?
No.
Yours didn't?
No. What are you talking about?
Mine did. Yes, mine came with a circular base that I am assuming I could glue underneath the rock
Really?
in like a more traditional Warhammer style.
I wonder if
Okay,
I just threw mine
interesting.
away and didn't notice it.
It's pretty garbage tier, I
Sure.
will say, but it did come with a base.
I didn't see that in my package at all. I think you already knew this. Man, that's like my catchphrase. I swear to God. Cannon and I talk pretty regularly, so
Yeah. Well, we do talk off the mics.
yeah. And when we talk off mic, we still have 2.5 or 3 hour conversations.
Yep.
Part of what made us think we could do a podcast is like, yeah, we're really long winded. I started painting him a day that I started to feel a little bit sick, and by the next morning went, I have COVID. So I was already kind of fighting a little bit, just being a little sick while I was working on this guy. Man, I kind of lost track of what I was saying there. That really is probably a good sign that it's time to start wrapping this up. But yeah, I would do that little bit of stuff, trying to rework some OSL, hopefully not throw away the base, which apparently there was. If I had seen that, I probably would have actually gone hardcore and tried to do a full basing project, knowing myself and how much I like doing all of that.
Yeah, I am curious to see your bases on moving forward, because this was a pretty simple base job. I just did it black, did some gray dry brush, little white dry brush, very basic.
Yeah, I played around a lot with trying to get that kind of magma glow in there, and it worked. And then I did some stuff and it didn't look as good, and then I did more stuff and it looked better, and I did more stuff and it looked worse. And I was just really trying to make that OSL work, because I've never really done it. I'll probably get back to doing some more basing stuff in the future, but I take a lot of time when I do basing, so I'll probably wait to do that for a few episodes until like maybe we've got a little bit more of a rhythm and I get a little bit faster as well. Because for me, taking 1 week to do a miniature and do the basing and get everything to where I like it is already kind of tight. Because I'm just not very fast yet. For me to make something that looks good, I'm not there.
Well, as we talked about earlier, it's reps, it's practice and reps.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, and my very last thing is I definitely should have tried something more interesting with the eyes. His eyes are so boring. I was just kind of bored with his face already. I didn't love the OSL stuff that I was doing on the base, trying to get it up onto his belly, which made me a little too intimidated to try OSL on his eyes. But I wish I'd gone for something kind of glowy and fun, sort of like you did.
Yeah, I mean, we both did some OSL. I have some other projects in the works that I'm doing OSL stuff with, and I am excited to show those off. So I think that kind of wraps it up.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you have any final thoughts about this model or this process?
Just that I think here's my final verdict on this model. If you are
Yeah, who should buy this model and who should avoid it?
who should buy this model? If you are like me and you kind of enjoy the holistic aspect of purchase, open box, put contents together, maybe do a little kit bashing, and then paint, and then display / play. I like all of it. I like pretty much every aspect of the miniature gaming hobby. You lose something in the customization options. It is what it is out of the box. So if you're the kind of person that likes doing that, probably avoid this model. But also, if you just need a dragon, not even a gold dragon, like if you just want a dragon that's roughly this size for D&D or hell, even some other system, it's like $20. Like it's already put together. Spray it or dry brush it gold. Boom, done. As like an artistic project, I think there's a lot to be desired. But as far as like a practical, easy to get on the table looking decent mini, as you said, from like 3 feet away, tabletop distance, I think this model's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think the price is probably the thing that helps this model the most.
Yeah.
Being a $20 model versus if I was buying something in the same size in a G-Dub range, the G-Dub model would be a nicer model, but it would also be
$60.
60, 80, 100, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is an instance where it being less expensive definitely actually raises my opinion of it.
Yeah.
I would say this is an awesome model if you are either A, somebody who just needs to get a challenge rating 10 dragon on his table,
Uh-huh.
and you happen to have, like, this is a perfect model for somebody who likes speed paints.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is
Yeah.
a great contrast paint, speed paint
It's
model.
already primed white. This thing will take speed paint or contrast paint or dipping inks or whatever your brand du jour of speed paint equivalent is. Yeah, it'll take it and run with it.
Yeah, and I think for somebody who wants to do that kind of lightweight paint job and just get it good enough and on the table, it's really not a bad model. And I would follow it by saying, if you're somebody who really wants to learn how to green stuff and putty well,
Yeah.
there are enough problems that you can fix them. Like that's the interesting thing. There are problems, but they're pretty dang fixable problems. And unlike a lot of green stuff projects, this one won't require any pinning.
No. No.
You can just go for it. And so I think there really are places for this. Kind of like if you go to the art store and, like I said, I decided I'm going to learn how to draw. I want to learn how to draw. Now, I could go out and I could buy these super, super nice, expensive pencils and charcoals and this, that, whatever. Or you can get the $10, $12 starter set and use that while you're learning your basic concepts so that when it eventually comes time to be good at what you're doing and it matters a bit more, then you can make those changes. This is a great model for learning that green stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I kind of wish I had done green stuff because I'm pretty darn good with it. Not a full-on sculptor, but I'm pretty darn good with it.
Right.
And that's a place where I could have made the model better. I tried not green stuffing. It didn't work. That's fine. And like, how about this? If you've got like a kid who's getting into D&D, they're 12 to 15, somewhere in that range, and they're trying to get into stuff. This would be a great model to give them as they're trying to get into.
Yes. Yeah. Very coloring book adjacent, this model. Like, it's mostly one color, some points of interest. I think that's a great thing if you have a painting club at your school, or if you have a D&D club or something. Yeah, it makes sense that it's WizKids. I think this is a great model for younger painters.
Yes.
And no assembly. If you're a parent that wants to teach kids to paint and you're a Warhammer gremlin like I am, but you don't want your 10-year-old futzing around with a hobby knife because you'll have to explain to mom, well, I had to take him to get his artery stitched up because he doesn't have knife control skills, get this model and you will be off to the races.
The people that I would tell to avoid this model, somebody who's looking for, I guess, anybody who's looking for an excellent model. Like, I don't care whoever you think the greatest painter in the world is, they could not win a golden demon with this model. And it's not based off their painting skills, it's based off the sculpt doesn't allow for it.
Yeah.
That would be my final thing there. Maybe in future episodes we flip the order so we can end on a high note. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's everything that I've got to say about a gold dragon.
Yeah, me too, man. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for tuning in to Small Talk. If you like what we're doing here, please leave us a like and subscribe on the YouTube channel, or a comment. Also, that helps. If you want to check us out on our Instagram page, where we will be posting our pictures that we are referencing, so that you are not just taking us at our word, that we are not making up out of whole cloth, that we actually paint models and we're just really good at improv or something. I will also be posting videos of the models I paint on my YouTube channel, and some of those models will be the ones discussed on this podcast if you want to see a more process-oriented step-by-step of these models getting put together. Keep hobbying, and we'll see you guys next week.
Take care.
Bye.